Welcome, everyone. I hope you can find a comfortable seat, and we're going to get underway. And my name is Stuart Reid. I'm Executive Director of Community Foundation Grey Bruce, and it's a great pleasure to welcome you here to Harmony Centre tonight for a discussion about social impact investing and community building and housing solutions. So quite a far-reaching topic that is, of course, really germane to our interests here in our region. So I know you're going to enjoy the conversation and be provoked and inspired. So thank you for being here. And to start off the evening, I invite Carrie Lee, the chair of our board of directors, to come forward to open the proceedings.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I would like to start with our heartfelt land acknowledgement. We acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabe, the people of the Three Fires, known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations, the Chippewas of Saugeen, and the Chippewas of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, and the Six Nations of the Grand River, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat, Wyandot, Wyandotte peoples, on whose traditional territories we gather. We recognize also the Métis and Inuit whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to strive for justice in all our relations. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its peoples. I have one housekeeping matter. We are live streaming and recording this event, so we just want everyone to know that you're going to be on YouTube live and in possibly in the recordings, so we can't ensure people's privacy. Excuse me, sorry. When I joined the board of Community Foundation Grey Bruce about 5 years ago, I had never heard of social impact investing or social finance, as it's also called. Being on the board has been rewarding and stimulating, but I can honestly say that the most exciting part of the board work has been learning about social impact investing and preparing our foundation to actually start making some social impact loans. As you will hear, for investors both large and small, it's a way to invest and use your assets to achieve a positive social or environmental impact while also making a financial return. And in many cases, you can make this impact right in the region where you live. For the social enterprises receiving the loans, it enables them to raise the capital that they need to grow and flourish. So it really was a sort of mind-blowing concept for me, and we all are continuing to learn about it. So we have some wonderful speakers tonight to share their knowledge about how it all works. And we also have two co-presenters that we have partnered with. And I would like to introduce Rosalind Morrison from the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay, who is one of our co-presenters. The Institute of Southern Georgian Bay has been a fantastic partner and collaborator with the foundation over the years. Roz is passionate about the power of community and formerly was a senior advisor at the Toronto Foundation. She was responsible for the foundation's research and community convening related to 100 Resilient Cities, which focuses on urbanization, globalization, and climate change. She most recently led the foundation team on a survey project to benchmark social capital, trust, social networks, civic connections, and neighborhood support. She has had many leadership roles in the arts and culture sector, and currently she serves as chair of the board of the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay and as a board member of the Blue Mountain Village Foundation. So, Rosalind, can you?
Hello, and thank you. What is the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay? Well, we are a group of dedicated volunteers. We're a nonprofit, and we have 4 priority areas that we work in order to accelerate progress. And one of those areas is social finance and affordable housing. We've created a learning group for this priority area a couple of years ago, and it's included up to about 25 people. And we are so very fortunate to have Marilyn Struthers, the moderator for this evening, as our amazing volunteer facilitator for this learning group. We also have Councillor Carol Merton and Stuart Reid and many others on this group who are involved in several municipalities right around the Bay. After about 18 months of learning together, this group produced the Southern Georgian Bay Affordable Housing Toolkit. And this is an important resource that has been shared through our events, our newsletters, and can be found on our website. This tool is meant for all of us, as we have much to learn about how this affordable housing crisis came to be and what each one of us can do to help create solutions. By bringing together residents like us, business, government, nonprofit, and philanthropic leaders, we can discuss these issues together and commit to collaborating on projects to accelerate progress. This evening is part of that journey, and we are so pleased to be a part of it. We hope you'll also attend the November 17th event called New Ways to Finance the Housing Affordability Gap, which will ensure the sustainability of our towns. It will take place in Meaford Hall, and please visit our website so that you can get more information at tisgb.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roz. And it's now my pleasure to introduce Greg Fryer of Habitat for Humanity Grey Bruce, our other presenting partner this evening. After serving on the board of directors for 4 years, Greg was appointed executive director of Habitat for Humanity Grey Bruce in 2011. Over the past 12 years, he's led the organization to increase its capacity to serve more families with affordable housing. Under his leadership, Habitat has built 44 homes throughout Grey Bruce. It has also built 28 homes on the First Nations territory, both with the Chippewas of Nawash unceded First Nation and Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. Greg's vision to see Habitat Grey Bruce continue to grow to provide more affordable home ownership opportunities for low and moderate income families, and to leverage Habitat's builds as classrooms for skills training for youth and those interested in a career in a home building trade. He and his team are currently preparing for a 7 townhome project in Owen Sound. This will be Habitat's largest build in the city. So we welcome Greg to say a few words. Greg.
Thank you, Stuart. Welcome, everyone, and it's my pleasure to be here tonight. Habitat for Humanity is a nonprofit home builder. We focus on home ownership. Our mission is to create opportunity for people to thrive through innovative housing solutions. Thrive is the key word in our mission statement. We want to see people not to have a roof over the head, which is so important, but through housing, prosper in their lives, do better, to grow, for children to have a safe place to live and to grow up in, that they can then, as a family, set higher goals and to thrive throughout their lives and into their adulthood. We need 5 things to accomplish our mission. First is families in need of affordable housing. And we know in this current housing crisis, there are a lot of families in that who have that need. Second, we need we need land to build on. We can't simply build houses and put them away and then bring them out when we have land. We need land to build on. Third, we need people. We have a skilled team of professionals that work with us building our homes, and also This year, we'll have on our builds over 700 individual volunteers help us build our homes with us. So we need people with skills to help us build homes and build them efficiently. Fourthly, we need donated building materials and services to help us build our homes. And then lastly, why we're here tonight, we need money, funds, to pay for the things we can't get donated. And we're looking at Habitat, looking for ways to find more funding sources that we can expand our capacity to serve more families and to be part of the solution of our housing crisis. So thank you very much.
I worked so hard on this script. So thank you, Greg, very much. I also want to acknowledge tonight the support of Bayshore Broadcasting. They're the Foundation's media partner and help us broadcast our message across the region. And we invited them to come say a few words. Unfortunately, no one could attend, but we acknowledge their ongoing support. And I'm really lost here. Yeah, could I have another look? So tonight we are going to have some presentations by our guests, Julia Grady, Ryan Deska, and Randall Howard. And this will be followed by a moderated discussion led by Marilyn Struthers and myself. And we're going to conclude the evening with an opportunity for you to ask questions from the floor as well. Is that better? And first off, I want to talk just for a moment about the Foundation's work in social impact investing. Carrie introduced the concept and was a great champion of that at our board table. And in 2022, our board of directors voted to establish a social impact investing fund with a designation of 1% of our total assets. And this fund allows the Foundation to invest money locally, garnering a financial return, but also making Grey Bruce a better place to live. A lot of the projects have a community give back built into them, of course. In making decisions and talking about the impacts of social impact investing, we often refer to the United Nations 10 Sustainable Development Goals as aspirational, and community foundations across the country have made a commitment to meeting those goals by 2030. The SDGs link our work in the local sphere with the global benefit. The Foundation's Vital Signs work also means that we gather local knowledge and data that can inform our social impact investing decisions and the priorities we set for that program. Social impact investing is accomplished through two distinct streams of investment. We call one mission-related investments or program-related investments. We have developed an application process, and we have the guidance of community experts to assist us in gathering all the necessary information to make good decisions. If your organization is interested in learning more about SII or would like to propose an investment, please contact our office. We'd be very happy to talk to you about how that happens. And we're going to learn about other modes of impact investing through our presentations this evening. And I'm pleased to introduce my co-moderator of tonight's discussion, Marilyn Struthers. Marilyn is a longtime resident of our community who has spent her career working in the landscape of engagement of people and place to shape the landscape in which we live. Her work has spanned many social issues and many roles as a funder, a writer, a trainer, and organizer, supporting the not-for-profit charitable sector's ability to innovate for public benefit. In the decade and a half, she worked at Ontario Trillium Foundation. During that time, she became interested in the many ways that money flows through projects that benefit communities, and she led the Foundation's early entry into the field of social enterprise and social finance, that being the Ontario Trillium Foundation. Marilyn was the first chair of social innovation at Toronto Metropolitan University. From her home in the woods of Georgian Bluffs, she now works primarily as a facilitator and volunteer lead with the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay's Social Finance Learning Group, which Roz told us about earlier. and she's focused on the financing of affordable housing in our community, leading that discussion. She's also been deeply engaged in the work of a community response to climate change and is a board member of Social Innovation Canada. So I'll invite Marilyn up to say a few words.
Thanks, Stuart. I just have little notes. Less confusing. I want to know how many people know what social enterprise is. Okay, getting somewhere. I want to know how many people know what social finance is. Okay. How many people believe our communities have wealth? Okay, so social finance and social enterprise are closely tied to some of the ideas you may have heard around circular economy, donut economy, community economies. And essentially what we're looking at is how do we leverage the assets we hold in the commons so that it serves community well, so it solves the problems that communities have. How many people buy local? How many people invest local? Okay, some. How many? Well, donate local and invest local are not the same, right? Your RSP or whatever assets you may have stored away for that rainy day, they're often invested by big funds. I have a finance guy. I'm sure lots of people have finance guys delegate that work. But what if we could lend, spend, and invest to community benefit? What if we had the ecosystem, the organizations, the mechanisms to be able to lend to the building of affordable housing? So in the work that we've been doing through the Institute, really housing for us has boiled down to a problem, an economic problem for our communities, a problem of sustainability. That at this point, the people who cannot afford affordable or cannot afford rental are often our workers in healthcare, long-term care. There are workers in retail, the people in the grocery store, and there are people that enable hospitality and tourism. So we all learned during the pandemic that these are the people that really run our community, right? They were the ones left on the front line. And I don't know how many of you have kids working in those fields. I do. And they're nowhere close to the 30% of income spent on rental that in Canada we say means affordable. So this is a community problem we need to do something about. And that's been the work of the Institute and the work that goes even more public on the 17th. But it's also the work of our guests tonight. So having just had the opportunity to have dinner, I have a ton of questions, and I know you will too. And each are going to give a few minutes presentation, and then Stuart and I are going to, in a privileged sort of way, ask them our questions. And then we'll turn the mic over to you to ask questions as well. So it's an opportunity to learn tonight. So with that, I'm going to introduce Julia, who I have just met. Julia is a long-term executive director, or CEO, co-founder of an organization I had never heard of till tonight called 10C, or 10 Carden in Guelph. And I'll let Julia explain exactly what it does, but here's the pieces I took away. This is an organization that specializes in change making and place building, collaborating for community benefit, making connections, and demonstrating how social finance and community wealth gets shared in a community. Fair enough? Over to you.
Okay, I can do this in my sleep, but let's try to get the slides. I'm very short, so I'm going to do this. Well, that messes everything up. Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm going to tell you a story about a small not-for-profit that started from nothing, and that's basically my organization, 10C. We wanted to connect community, so I love that we're doing this in a community hub. And I heard a tiny bit about how this space became the space that it is right now. Beautiful. So we started in a small, like 500 square foot main floor space on Carden Street, which is one of the nicest streets in downtown, right across from our city hall, with a mission of giving community a place to convene, connect, share, collaborate, build things in. And we knew that over time we needed to be accessible, affordable, and increase the breadth of our work. So that led us to looking at how we can actually purchase real estate. We had a for-profit landlord, and we were in a building that had not been maintained ever. So what we ended up doing was, as a not-for-profit, in 2015, 16, 17, we looked at ways to purchase property using social financing, which is essentially just community lending to not-for-profits as a way to purchase a large asset in our downtown. That was 7 years ago, and we're still going strong through COVID and the whole bit. So my summary is entirely right there, but since 2016, we've raised $2.5 million in social lending. We've done that twice because we've renewed 5-year terms. So we have 140 community investors, and their investments range from $1,000 up to about, our largest investor is a university, and they invested $183,000. This is imminently possible for not-for-profits, and it's also, I'm talking about a community hub that is non-residential, obviously, but the model is transportable to other things, including housing. So one of my kind of passion areas is to work one-on-one with change makers. The people implementing this work don't have to come from a finance background. It is not the finance sector that's going to solve housing. It is people and not-for-profits and other organizations in our community that are going to find innovative ways to solve for a massive, massive, massive problem. So wherever I sent, there you go. So that's our beautiful building. It's 15,000 square feet, commercial space right in the middle of our city. It's a landmark property that needed, in a way, a not-for-profit organization to step into, because it didn't fully make commercial sense at that point in time for the for-profit development sector, and it also was never for sale to the for-profit development sector. So we purchased it, we renovated it. It was a building that hadn't been touched in 100 years, so don't do that when you want to create affordable housing. Let's start with something easy. But we successfully did the thing. Tensi's work looks at placemaking sustainable food systems. We have a full commercial kitchen that serves about 15 entrepreneurs and food learning organizations on the 4th floor. We do lots of community engagement and support social enterprises using tools of social finance. This is our kind of like story here. The little building on that side was where we started, and that was the building we dreamed about purchasing, and then also did purchase, fully renovated. It's beautifully accessible. There's a brand new steel structure inside, and it's fully up to code, and a beautiful, modern, amazing facility. And I've kind of prefaced the summary sentence of the investors. So $2.5 million is a lot of community, I'm going to call it community engagement, but to a board, it could look like a lot of community liability and debt and risk. What that enabled for us, though, was, I'm going to flip through that. We have now 400 members, and when we started this project, we were maybe 50 members. We host about 1,800 events in our facility to about 25,000 visitors. 2 years ago, we also took on the operations of the Guelph Farmers Market. Our municipality was struggling with managing it, so we stepped in as an activator and placemaker of space to run the farmers market as well. So it has opened up a ton of amazing things for us. This is the kitchen. Just a little summary snapshot. Tons of things happen up there, and it's supporting local enterprise that is important in our community. and then farmers market. And there's linkages between all of our projects, and none of these things would have been possible if we hadn't embarked on the big thing, which was this terrifying project of small not-for-profit purchasing property and figuring out how to engage in our community. And I'm going to talk for 2 seconds about what a community bond could look like. My one of my colleagues says it's like an IOU with paperwork. We have this property that is owned, has a valuation, and there's a first mortgage. We work with Van City Community Investment Bank, and they have a first mortgage on the property, and then all of the community bonds are held together on something called a second mortgage that then is registered to the title on the property. And then with that paperwork in place, we're able to go to community members and say, we have an asset-backed investment opportunity for you, and these were our terms. So we were bond raising between 2015 and now, and our terms look like 2.75% to 4.25%. We have an internal limit of 5% that is the maximum we're able to offer as interest on the bonds. And what that means for our organization is that every year we're putting that it's about $95,000 of interest into the community. So instead of that interest payment going out somewhere else, it's actually going into community members who are shopping locally or doing things in their community, and in some instances who are also inspired to invest in other projects. And we have that. One of our first questions from an investor is usually, what might I do next? Because social investing is still very new, and people want to learn about how to do more. I think I'm going to leave that there. We, in our structure, though, last thing, in our structure we have $1,000 as a minimum, which our mandate was to make it very, very accessible. If I had $2.5 million of $1,000 bond investors, that would be so much work for the organization. So there are ways to do this. Our average is about $18,000 for investors, and we have investors who add funds every year, just in the same way that some people invest in their RSPs or other assets over time. People bring bonds to us every year, and it has the paperwork, the structure, the diligence that it I'm going to say imposes on an organization is actually part of the enterprising nature of the not-for-profit. So our not-for-profit is very enterprising, and it makes us build out a diverse revenue model. It helps us engage community because we're creating different models for people to use. I think I'm going to leave it there because we're going to talk a ton as we go through.
Thank you, Julia. That's great. And when we were putting this panel together, Ryan Deska, who's going to speak next, talked about how Julia was a great mentor to the program that he's going to talk about too. So there's some wonderful interrelationships in our panelists this evening. So next up is Ryan Deska, who is an experienced community development professional who's worked on lots of projects related to rural Ontario. I first met Ryan at Rural Ontario Institute presentation on rural wealth transfer a number of years ago in Guelph. He's also a Grey Bruce resident, so somebody in the neighborhood. In his previous positions, he's worked with provincial government, not-for-profit sector, and more recently, lower-tier municipality. He's also worked alongside community stakeholders, addressing and exploring issues related to life in rural Ontario. Today, Ryan is working with Habitat for Humanity Guelph Wellington. In his role, he's helped to structure their community bonds program, a social impact investment opportunity that directly supports community-level investment in affordable housing projects throughout Guelph and Wellington County. So we look forward to hearing a little bit from Ryan.
Yeah, thank you, Stuart, and it's really nice to be here. Really exciting to see a lot of different worlds colliding in the room here, ideas and concepts and previous work that I've done in the past. I will mention in the community development work that I've done in the past, we call a night like tonight R&D, or rob and duplicate. And that's what you mentioned is really what we did with Julia. I owe a lot of credit. When I came to Habitat, our CEO, Steve Howard, said, figure out this community bond thing. We're going to look at leveraging community level investment for our projects. And I knew nothing about it. So it was amazing to have another local organization in Guelph. Julia served as a mentor for us to help us structure the bonds and give us some of her experiences in doing so, so that we could do what we've done. And I think that's central to what we all need to be doing, is supporting each other through this. There I am there. I'm really fortunate that Mr. Fryer here was preceding me. I don't have to get into the Habitat model fully, but fundamentally we do see the housing and the home as a platform for future success in the community. One thing I might add as well is the affordable home ownership model is central to actually the allowing families to build wealth in the community through equity and appreciation in their homes. And this is something that's really valuable to everyone. We're talking about investment tonight and leveraging community wealth, but we're also in our work trying to foster family level wealth. So that just points out where we stand on the housing continuum. Something we say all the time is that we fundamentally at Habitat Guelph Wellington, and other habitats as well, but we fundamentally believe that it takes a whole breadth of solutions to address the housing challenges. We are not the silver bullet solution. We serve one part of the housing continuum, but it's a really important component, and the work that we do gives us a lot of opportunity to support other organizations. We are able to build homes, and we are able to support other housing providers in building their own homes through the work that we do and through collaboration. So I just want to emphasize that point in the spirit of what we're doing here tonight, is that in our future projects, we are looking at that as being a facilitator and being able to kickstart a balanced community design with affordability being central. So when we started looking at community bonds, fundamentally it stems from what our vision is at Guelph Wellington in responding to the need for housing locally in the community, but also in looking to expand our impact. And so we've been growing exponentially year over year, and looking ahead, this is 100 plus. We're looking at 200, 300, 400 plus homes per year. This is part of our vision for what we want to be able to accomplish at Habitat Guelph Wellington, and community bonds and this level of ongoing social investment from the community is what we are hoping to achieve. And so this was sort of at the point when we started exploring this through Julia and through other means. This is our last project. It represents the scale that we're looking to build at. This was 28 townhomes, stacked townhome design, so it's a higher level of density infill development that we're trying to accomplish. And this project also did feature prominently a number of key partners. So in looking at our vision, we posed this question: what if we could be working with the community such that the collective investment from the community could be directly supporting us to build homes? And as a builder, we are, but as a charity and a not-for-profit, we don't have large cash reserves. We're not able to make some of the moves that developers do. And so our vision is to build up a pool of investment such that we can build the sustainability and the consistency in our build cycles to accomplish the vision. A lot of habitats struggle with the idea of finding land and then once you have the land, you do the fundraising and you build, and then the whole process resets itself. And what we're looking to accomplish is a greater level of consistency in the work that we do, and being able to look ahead to a further horizon, such that we can be building more homes year after year. And so this is what we've pulled together for our community bonds. Because we're building at a based on our model for social investment, we're able to offer fairly competitive rates, and this still represents a cost savings for us in terms of by comparison with other financing sources. But this is the package that we've pulled together for the community. This process has been very successful for us. We've raised about $4 million in a little over a year. The rates certainly make that an attractive prospect. But it's been a really amazing experience to be connecting with the community in very new ways. We've had local city bus drivers dropping off a $5,000 check all the way up to someone selling their home and investing $800,000. We've had large corporations investing as part of their CSR package, but also other people in the housing continuum investing together to sort of strengthen the housing offerings in the city. So there's been just a really amazing energy behind this, and in looking at the benefits, I sort of talked about some of the fundamental reasons why we started exploring this for financing. But it's having this kind of community investment in your projects when you're working to move forward with the planning process, and you're looking to connect with local councillors, and you're looking to connect with partners for building or for procuring land and things like this. To have this level of community investment behind the projects is impactful in and of itself for us, because it shows that the community is behind us. They're invested directly in the project, and they're wanting to see the success of these projects. So this is a little bit about, again, I don't want to belabor it too much, but this is a little bit about what we've done to incorporate community bonds and social impact investing into the work that we do. There's been a great response from across Canada, not just in Guelph. We've had Centre Wellington Community Foundation on board right from the beginning, Grey Bruce Community Foundation on board. We've had investors from Winnipeg and Quebec and BC. And I think it's when you look at housing, it's a really tangible product that you're investing in. Our model is a little bit different from Julia's in that we have a repayment date at project completion. We repay the principal and the interest. And so it's a really tangible investment. People can wrap their heads around. There's good security against the project. We work with our trustee to ensure that all of the drawdowns on the funds are going against project-related costs and all of that kind of stuff. So people really understand what it is we're doing. We're building housing, and I think that's really helped us. But what's really exciting, I think, is looking at all the different models and all the different ways that it can support other organizations. And so, in the spirit of Rob and Duplicate, that's why we wanted to come today and share. And thanks very much.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm sure you've inspired a lot of questions in the room already, so we're going to look forward to speaking a little bit more in depth about the logistics and technicalities of your community bonds program. So next up we have Randall Howard. Randall is chair of the board of Centre Wellington Community Foundation in Fergus, Ontario. He's a tech visionary, a CEO, investor, and philanthropist. Randall has had a distinguished career building and funding global innovation firms. A prominent leader in the Canadian Angel Investment Network, Randall has co-founded GTAN Angels, Archangel Adrenaline Fund, and the Cognition Fund. Randall is committed to a purpose across a broad spectrum from corporate to social enterprise, driving social innovation and social finance. For example, he is a founder chair of Centre Wellington Community Foundation and works with Community Foundations of Canada on national programs, and including helping facilitate the Canada-UK Social Innovation Immersion earlier this year. And we're looking forward to hear Randall's remarks.
Thanks, Stuart. And I think from your introduction, it's what my wife says, I wear way too many hats, but I've got to a point in place in life where I try to keep busy. I don't like golf, and so I do a lot of things, and they kind of connect. And the thing is, they're all good, but I probably still should drop some of those things. I think there's a really interesting culture of sharing amongst community foundations, sharing amongst the charitable sector, social enterprises, the work Julia did with Habitat, etc. But I wanted to sort of provide some context and particularly speak to kind of some of the roles that some of you and community foundations can fit into the bigger picture. So one of the things I would start with is there is a movement of social innovation that spoke to me over 15 years ago. A lot of it came out of from various sources, but including the tech industry I came from, because it's almost like a reinvention of the charitable sector. One of my friends who was involved with building the Fogo Island Shorefast Foundation says, charity used to be a model of begging, and I'm privileged, and I'm a poor charity, help me out. But social innovation and social enterprise is supposed to make it a peer relationship to make, through new models, to make long-term sustainable organizations that can do good. Now, that's not the pure definition. And so social enterprises are kind of the new language for it, just like a lot of people are shifting from traditional granting language to investing, switching from language like philanthropy to just giving. So part of social innovation is just changing the language we use. And one of the greatest tools, what we're talking about tonight, is social finance. I got involved in a national social finance task force about 6 years ago with Community Foundations of Canada, with the sense that we'd been at this about 15 years. And as Julia said, who's one of the pioneers, it's been a slow burn to get going. And within community foundations, I think by 2019 and just before COVID, there was something like 27 out of the 200. So it's like 13% of community foundations were doing it, which was way up over the 3 or 4 that kind of started it. And then quickly, within 1 or 2 years, there's another 18. And the numbers I see right now is that 85% of community foundations are considering it and moving into it. So it's moving quickly mainstream. Well, why is that? Well, one is it's so powerful. But two, one of the things that COVID taught us is that on every issue, the traditional approaches were no longer enough. COVID blew the circuit breakers on every single social issue in our community. We see it from food security, mental health, arts and culture organizations have had some struggles, and there's some big ones in the news, and housing. Housing's one of the biggest one. And actually before COVID, we as a community foundation had flagged housing as one of the top areas that needed a lot of attention, but we said, we don't have enough assets to deal with it. Like, we can't deal with it. But then when COVID came, housing became such a price that we couldn't avoid it. So anyway, what happened is, because we had established a social finance fund about 5 or 6 years ago, and we were early probably because I was participating in the National Task Force, and as a small foundation, we basically have 6 or 7% of our assets in that form. We want to take it to 10. Maybe we should take it to 20. Maybe we should take it to 100. Depends who you talk to. But you got to start somewhere and work your way up. Our first investments were national programs, one around sustainable development goals. There was not a lot in our community at that time. And when Ryan came with the tutelage of Julia with Habitat, we were instantly on board. And their first bonds were around the land, and then they've done another one around the build. we've also been on board with that. What actually, though, I really like about this is that the best stuff is actually involving everyone. I love the fact that social finance is, as they say, it's spreading across foundations and community foundations. It's spreading to individuals, both high net worth and the bus driver in town. Ordinary people are getting involved, corporations, pension funds. So I think that we're in a time of 10 times or 100 time expansion of social finance. As people may have read the news, the government announced 15 years ago or 12 years ago a social finance fund. We got a 400 million down payment on it after 12 years earlier this year, and they're just now deploying it in bigger projects. So we're going to watch this space. We're going to see a lot, and I really applaud the Grey Bruce Community Foundation for getting into it. I guarantee, Carrie, I know you've been a driver, that as you go in future years, you're going to be doing more and more. And of course, the question is, social finance also needs things to invest in. So you can invest in things across the country, but you also need in your community. So you need people in the community to generate those things. And I should point out that social finance is and impact investing is a big thing, because if you think about it, like community bonds are kind of like a second mortgage. They're the bonds of social finance. There are other forms like equity. So angel investing many times is people who choose not to just put their money in the stock market. They're giving back, they're mentoring, they're helping build the businesses of tomorrow, whatever they might be. People are consciously choosing to make that investment. And yes, they're hoping to get a financial return, and often do, but they're also wanting to do bigger things as well. So it's really quite interesting as we get more players involved, the government, the corporates, the individuals, and the foundations. It's just this snowball will grow and grow. And it's all in the context of social innovation. And I guess what I would say, for speaking again from the lens of a foundation, one of the things I realized when we started Centre Wellington Foundation is we were small. And you know, it's as Stuart said, it's the amalgamated community of about the size of Stratford when you put it all together, around Fergus and Elora, outside of Waterloo Region and Guelph. It's quite wealthy, but we weren't big. So everyone asked, what are your assets? And I learned to say, that's not the question I want to answer. The question I want to answer is, what's your impact? So for example, let's do a thought experiment. If you have every $1 million of assets you have, traditionally you put 3.5%, that's the quota you're supposed to put in. So that's $35,000 into generating impact through granting. Now, if you do better investment terms, maybe you can make that 5% or encroach. But with impact investing, let's say you put another 5% or into impact investing. Suddenly, you've almost tripled your impact. There are other ways you can grow your impact. Like our manifesto in our foundation is, how can we have 5 to 10 times the impact of a foundation that is just granting off its endowed assets? And that is the trend line of where it's going. And we talked a lot about that in the UK when we had 50th go over earlier this year. And you say, why UK? Well, it's partly because they're doing things over there, some of them ahead of us, but also getting people from Canada together who are leading helps everybody to move up a notch. So anyway, part of that is sharing. So I would challenge people in this audience, you're all wearing different hats, get involved. Don't be the person on the board of the organization that says, I want to do it the same way I did it in the 1970s or 1990s. Help drive change, because the problems are bigger than ever. You saw Ryan, they have to do builds that are 10 times the size, and even that's not enough. So how do you amp up your activities that much? And these tool blocks from social innovation and social finance are probably your best place to start. So I'll leave it at that. We can have some questions, but I could talk for a lot longer on this, as people know, but hopefully that gives a little bit of how this sort of hangs together.
Thank you, Randall. Well, I'm going to invite our panelists up, and Marilyn will have a seat at the table here. prepped some questions that we're going to go through. Marilyn and I pulled together some prompts to get the conversation rolling, and we'll see where it goes. And as I mentioned, there will be time for the audience to step forward and to ask questions as well. Forgive us for the feedback.
I think we need to move this mic
This
farther.
one farther away. Marilyn, maybe you could start with a prompt.
Yeah, sure. So just, Randall, for you, segueing off that quite wonderful presentation about the way the nonprofit sector thinks about itself and thinks about money. It's something that's been in my mind for quite some time. To think about a building as an asset that could be leveraged, or to think about a membership as a group of investors, how do we make that shift? How do we start thinking that way?
It's an interesting question, and I think at the board level, it's always good to have people on your board that are already in that. Like I hear in this community, you've got people who are exposed to it and are bringing it to others. So sharing specific education around it is good. But I think learning by sharing is important. And I think that was one of the drivers of the people going to the UK is we've got a group now that suddenly has moved to a next level. We're just waiting to figure out how do we get that disseminated across the country. And it can't just be an online meeting. It's got to be going to events like this and sharing ideas, helping brainstorm, and so on. And so, again, I got to say that every single one of us in our activity, whether with community foundations, whether with community bonds, whatever we're doing, we've all been mentored by several people. That mentorship model is really important. Is there a way to scale that up? Probably. Like in the tech industry, we have accelerators and all sorts of programs and venture studios. I don't know if anyone's built the charitable venture studio, but given that we don't have them, let's start and just do it one at a time, find people that can help make it happen.
Okay, a nonprofit venture studio. We're on it.
I wanted to ask Ryan and Julia a little bit more about some of the other professionals that are part of the ecology that has to exist. Ryan, you talked about the trustee. I'm wondering, Julia, if you had to engage other skills and professionals in your community to get the bonds program working.
Yeah, for sure. Ryan, can I
Yeah,
start that one?
yeah, sure. Yeah, I had Julia, so
Yeah. So Ryan had me, which was awesome. I'm sure it saved you legal fees, accounting fees, planning fees, and staffing because you knew all the steps to kind of embark on. So the other professionals, definitely. So there's a lawyer. There's an almost open source model of what the structure is for this. So when I say this is like readily available to not-for-profits, the model is readily available to not-for-profits. There's when you structure your bonds, you have usually a local lawyer as the trustee. So all the documentation goes through that trustee, and as Ryan talked about, kind of is monitored and whatnot. And then obviously accounting. It takes, I'd say that it takes extra staffing inside your organization, but if you're already a charitable foundation issuing receipts and dealing with a lot of donations, there's nothing different about the workflow. And then maybe just a little bit of like extra accounting costs. And then really strong community engagement, because the community bonds, as Ryan knows, you're the one talking to people about them. They are offered by the organization. It's not outsourced to like an investment firm to do this for us, which is part of one of the kind of covenants of the structure.
yeah, I would say just to build on that, the community engagement piece is big, and we did our regular advertisements and things like that, but having those webinars and the one-on-one phone calls and the information booklets out there to create investor confidence, because it is a new form of investing, and people, there were some folks who, the idea of sending $50,000 check off to a trustee that's seemingly loosely connected to the organization and not really knowing what was going to happen next was a little bit unnerving at first. So we tried to put enough information out there, and there's a legal trust agreement between Habitat and our trustee, and as there is in others, but effectively communicating that to the investor so they understand what they're getting into, I think was really important, so that they can sort of see what some of those components are, and why the investment is a solid thing.
Can I just add one thing? It's one of the things that's interesting, and I think you raise a good point, is we have an investment committee at our community foundation, as you probably do as well. And right now we're doing it through the same investment committee, but just adding to it as a different asset class. The investment committee, of course, wants some kind of diligence. And when it's Habitat, they're going, well, Habitat's big, it's got a long track record, it's not going anywhere. The diligence may be less than for a smaller organization that's less well known. So I think that's an area that probably is going to need work as you develop. And some of that work may come from, I was going to say, I know there are instances where community foundations have sometimes granted to organizations to help them build the capability. I don't know if that's something you've thought about, but building that capability Habitat probably had the resources to do it and the help, but a smaller organization may need more help even than you had. So something to think about.
Great.
So, questions for Julia. I've been thinking for some time, how do we get the spin going so that we actually have an ecosystem of Habitat, lawyers who can help with community bonds, enterprising organizations that can think this way. And I asked you online when we were chatting, what's the starter? What's the sourdough starter that's going to help us get it started? So would you reflect on that?
Yeah, sure. So I think the sourdough starter is something's happening with two of these. Yeah. With yeah, that's much better. Is a tangible project in your community, and a few people. Like, it could take 3 people who are really passionate about digging into what the model could actually look like, to kind of grow and whatnot. There are now enough examples. Like when we did our community bond, there were like 3 maybe, and CSI was the main leading one in that. And now there are more projects that have emerged. So there are other organizations that you can connect with, and it is, as we kind of talked about before, like a very collaborative sector. So I think it is the projects in the community. We know that the money is there. Like, people need, like, we are at the same time that we're doing good, we're investing in things that we need to repair the damages of. Like, we know that that's a reality. So I think the local action is like probably one of the most important things. Even if it's on a very, very, very small scale, learn how the tools work and then think about how it could be applied to like larger projects, because not everything has to exponentially scale.
Julia, you also talked about enterprising nonprofits as being integral to getting it off the ground. Do you have a relationship, does 10C or maybe Ryan, in terms of cultivating that capacity and knowledge and education around social finance to make connections with local not-for-profits?
Yeah, I can go on that. So 10C I'm a lifelong entrepreneur who built a not-for-profit. I'm like, why did I do that? But it was around using the power of enterprise to create cool things in community, and not to be 100% grant or philanthropically obligated. That I'm finding is a semi, it's not a unique skill, but we need more entrepreneurial people working in organizations. And then we also need their organizations to be entrepreneurial. And a lot of times I talk about, I'd say the skills and grit and determination, and also the ability to take risks that are needed to have that kind of organization. And I balance that with the risks right now of inaction. Like, our big risk around housing is the slow pace and then the increasing challenges that that's going to present. So there is a risk to inaction, and there are ways to build a risk-taking organization that balances the risk with good tools, and real estate gives you something solid to balance some of that with, but it does need entrepreneurialness at its core. So what we do at 10C is we help work with other not-for-profits to kind of mentor in a very informal kind of mentorship way to help them learn the skills, because, and or even just realize the path so that they can implement their own skills in that, because not all of this is super cookie cutter. And then the second bigger thing we're working on right now is we have a project called Harvest Impact, which is a community lending fund that's around food, farm, and environment entrepreneurs. So within the scope of all of that work, people are applying to now 10C for financing, and within that, we help provide tools like helping them understand their credit ratings, because not all of us understand how our credit ratings work, and understand how to build out a revenue model that can generate, even as a not-for-profit, a surplus to carry debt. And I'm going to end that one there because I could talk for a long time about it.
Yeah, I would just add, I mean, I think we're fortunate. Our CEO, Steve Howard, has a very innovative and entrepreneurial vision for our local habitat there, and so he's been pushing that forward, and it allows us to explore things like this. I do think at the end of the day, the numbers need to make sense. You need to clearly understand how you're going to make the repayment work and how it's going to create the impact that you want it to have in your organization. So you need that due diligence to it. But we've been able to explore this, and a lot of interesting things have happened since we've started doing community bonds. There's been different impacts that we didn't foresee happening, and so it's sort of taking that leap and taking a little bit of risk, and then other things start to open up and emerge, and then just to speak to that a little bit too, is one of the things we're exploring, to Julia's point about inaction and on housing, and one of the other things that we're doing at Habitat to help us add viability to our projects, or to ensure viability to our projects, is a blending of market sales and habitat sales. And it's a social enterprise of sorts, whereby the market sales are offsetting the costs such that we can make more homes more affordable to our families. We're able to build more homes for Habitat families by doing the market sales than we would if we didn't. But that market sales component we need to be careful around it too. And there's from some of the more maybe risk averse affiliates, there's some hesitancy around that. And it's just one of the other models we're exploring to finance our projects, but it is a bit of a leap. We're pretty confident in it, in that we're, able to accomplish more by doing that. But yeah.
Randall, do you have a comment to offer?
Not too much, but I guess I was going to say, one of the things that may not have been apparent is that Julia is a nonprofit, Habitat is a charity. So people can layer different things together, like Ryan said, the combination of market and the affordable units, the community bonds, but also the impact of being able to be a charity and write receipts for certain parts of their work as well. And I've seen that hybrid model work really well, where think of it as different layers of the funding and the strategy, but they're different, because if a charity thinks that a community bond is like a grant, where you have to pay it back, you have to pay the interest, as you said. So layering those things together takes a lot more strategic creativity, but it's very powerful in enabling you to do more. So the combinations are really important as well for success.
Great.
Sure. So I wanted to come back to you, Ryan. What did you mean by balanced community design?
Yeah, that's part of our vision right now. is, and something we're hearing politically and on the ground amongst other housing providers, is that the current housing crisis needs a whole spectrum of solutions. One of the things we're proud about with the idea of integrating market sales into our buildings as part of the financing model for those projects is that we're building, first of all, we're building to a market standard for the whole build. So we're building an affordable housing project that is at the level of any other market build. But we're also blending a broader background of socioeconomic backgrounds into the project. It's an important principle of community design to sort of not have these segregated communities. But our bigger vision is to connect and be working with all the different levels of the housing continuum. And as a builder, Habitat's in a unique position where we're already building homes. And if we can connect with other housing providers from the outset on a project, such that we're able to build homes for other not-for-profits and charities that are looking to provide housing solutions, if we can do that all together, we can build a balanced community. And by connecting their different sources of, maybe they have investors through community bonds or they have funding from the government, we can combine our equity to a project and move forward on a project that otherwise might be unfeasible for just Habitat. So by working together, we can expand what's possible, have bigger projects, and that are balanced along the housing continuum. So that's where we're hoping to get to. And we think that our most recent projects are microcosms of that, in that we've been able to work with local not-for-profits, community living, Guelph Wellington. We have the county level supplemented rentals incorporated into our last project, and we're looking to expand our connections. One thing I want to point out there too, one of the interesting things, we were meeting with a local developer who is interested in integrating Habitat into one of their upcoming developments, and it makes sense for them from a corporate social responsibility perspective and a little bit of a PR perspective. But they also, in sincerity, want to be creating more balanced communities. And he was reflecting on, well, what's the value for me in bringing Habitat to the table? And he was you could see his mind churning on the idea. And we were talking about community bonds. And he said, if you were able to bring a certain level of equity to the project from the beginning, that he wouldn't have to extend his own financing for that. There'd be cost savings to it. There would be he could move the project forward a little bit faster. So all of a sudden, our community bonds, being able to leverage the collective wealth of the community, puts us in a position where we can move our projects forward, not just on our own, but it makes us a value-added partner. And that was a really exciting realization for us, because it's not really where we had started when we were looking at community bonds, but it all feeds together.
So we just sort of add in a way to that. One of the things that we've learned in the exploration of housing here, and particularly the affordable rental of folks in those service industries that at the moment are having trouble being an employment sector, is that commercial developers now are telling us they can't build to the rental levels that people in those communities can actually afford. So the median income in Owen Sound, household income, something like $50,000, and that at 30% isn't very much rent. It's certainly well below what market rent is right now. But what you're saying is that not only then does a community build like Habitat begin to whittle down the cost of because we don't have to take a profit out of it, but actually community investment then is an enticement for commercial developers to join in collaboration. Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. We're able to support the viability of their project. The Habitat model is uniquely, not uniquely, but one of the ways that it connects with the existing for-profit development world, because we do, if you break down the way that we do our Habitat mortgage model, is that the families assume a first mortgage for what constitutes 30% of their monthly or annual income. And we carry the balance of what the market rate for that project is as a second mortgage for 20 years with no interest and no down payment. But fundamentally, the family is still buying that house at market rate. It's just that we're able to control to make it affordable from a cash flow perspective over time. So we're in a position, I don't know if it's getting too complicated, but we're just in a position where we can work with builders and we can integrate our model with theirs. But yes, I think you're right. Being able to having the investment and being able to bring that forward can help us to partner with other groups for sure.
That's cool. Thank you.
So we did talk a little bit about the SDGs in various ways through our opening remarks. I'm just wondering, when I think about our community foundations investments, we always try and make sure that we're not investing off mission. So our investment house is very ESG compliant, and I'm wondering how that ethic of sustainability and conservation and the impacts of climate change and meeting the goals of the SDGs in 7 years, does that figure into any of your conversations or relationship building? It sounds like there are myriad different relationships you're activating with these activities. Maybe Julia, you could start.
Yeah, sure. I think not-for-profits and charities are super well positioned for action on the SDGs. And a lot of, in a way, the SDGs are thematic linkages, but there's this whole discipline called localizing the SDGs, because a lot of the context is international. So what do the themes mean locally? And I think even within 10C, sustainable cities, number 11 is our kind of main, but there's impacts in food, in economic well-being, and the circular economy kind of components. So telling those stories in our content, I think, is important, and really connecting people, like Randall had said, to the actual impact of the projects, right? Like, our project is the home for social change and community connection in Guelph. Even in COVID recovery, even during COVID recovery, our spot is one of the busiest doors on the street, and it's always somewhere that people can come to connect and ask and or start their things. So I think local engagement is one of our number one kind of components in terms of impact, but definitely correlate impact reporting, and then correlating all of the different change elements to the SDGs is a whole field and a whole other 80 days of conversation that I think more organizations at the not-for-profit level are gaining more competencies within, so that you can communicate your tangible and real impacts when in a context of competing with ESG sometimes impacts.
Do you want to move to the audience questions?
Sure, let's do that. I'll move this. Kevin, is that okay to? Okay. We're going to move a mic up here. If people have a question, maybe you can step forward and let our panelists respond.
If I could just quickly on the sustainability component, we're just one project speaking to that idea maybe of enterprising not-for-profits, but we were approached recently by a Rotarian who was interested in doing in kickstarting a partnership to add a solar installment onto one of our upcoming builds, and we contemplated it back and forth, and we said, well, it's not really on mission with, well, it is and it isn't. Is it on mission? Is it adding complexity and expense to our project to integrate this? So the pushback was, if we do this, we want it to be a significant impact for our families from a cost savings perspective. And so we tossed around, okay, is this feasible? And we came up with a plan. It's a very ambitious solar installment, including green energy design, where we're hoping looking at getting around 70 to 80% net offset in electrical consumption for the building, and then that is getting passed on directly as savings to our Habitat families. And it's an exciting project. It immediately opens the doors to new partners coming to the table and bringing their ideas and their skills and capacities. And from an investment perspective, it's proven to be something that people are excited to invest more in, because we're doing just other things that might connect with them. The sort of what Julia was saying of like, what's next? What's the next project now? And it sort of the confidence that builds when you start doing the community bonds and you start seeing that people are there and interested in investing. If you take on the next thing and the next thing, it sort of creates that it becomes contagious. And we're really excited about that project. We have really amazing local community support, I mean, I think it's directly on mission, and I'm glad we pushed it forward, because it is going to contribute to the affordable cost of living for our families and the success in the program. So.
Great.
Hey, so inviting questions. How do we do this in our community? You can just go and stand somewhere near the microphone and we'll recognize you.
Number one with the Habitat, I'm sorry, I forgot your...
Ryan.
Ryan.
Yeah.
Looking at the screen and seeing a return of 7.25%, I think it was, for a 2-year interest, that's what the investor is receiving back. That's a remarkable accomplishment. And what I'm thinking is, when I'm listening, I'm feeling I'm listening to a language that I don't fully understand. And I know at your table, because you're right in the thick of it, there's probably a lot of things that just, you have a full sense of context. So I guess what I'm thinking is if I were to think of the future as a person that might have creative ideas or thoughts about it, the deeper my knowledge of the financial mechanics, and even almost like dumbing it down to sort of some of the, here's some examples, Francis, of how, this amount of money did this, just sort of the concrete steps. That would be really helpful to me. So I don't know if that's a question, but maybe it just invites some comments from you.
Yeah, for sure. The language of the sector is the worst. Literally the worst. I went, Tennessee was founded in, 2008 at the other economic collapse. And I went in 2012, I think I went to the Social Finance Forum. And all I did was write, it was like a language translation. But at its core, this is like local investing to do things in your communities, right? Yeah. And there are ways, there's definitely a ton of work we need to do to de-jargonize everything, and that's where the notion of it's like an IOU with paperwork kind of came from, for us to describe to people. We really also try to describe to people the methods that we make money so that we can pay them back. And then my mother-in-law's kind of best comment is risk, when we talk about, it's real asset-backed real estate or risk backing, really just means what happens when if everything goes south, you sell the thing, right? So my my mother-in-law asked that great question, so I always kind of use her. She's like, if everything goes south, you'll just sell the building and people will get paid back. The tension, I think, for not-for-profits in this is we also need to speak the social finance language, or we won't be taken seriously. And that's so there's this big challenge of how do you engage locally while having a package that speaks to all the levels of investors, from foundations or universities or businesses, and local communities. And we try in our package to be as plain language as we can, but all of the language is super challenging. And I think it is going to be up to myself and Ryan and the rest of the people making these tools for community members to de-jargonize as best as we can.
And as you say, that to be successful, we actually need to learn the language too, and have a sort of a fundamental understanding of the finance world. Otherwise, like you said, you won't gain any attention or support.
Yeah.
So I was just going to point that out. I think you raised a really good question. And sometimes dumbing it down isn't always possible. The language is actually quite clear. It's just new. And maybe some of it's too cumbersome, I don't know. But a lot of the language in community foundations and endowed foundations is a little odd to people. Like, it takes a while for them to understand. A lot of the language of Bay Street and all the guys, it is also complicated, as Julia says. So I think at the very least, and is yes, we can probably simplify, but a lot of education needs to happen. I know we do a lot of work on that, because to some extent, it's not just the language, which is new, which is a thing, all of social innovation. It's the concept of a charity that used to be this organization that was just always begging for help, starting to act like a financial intermediary and starting to take these, what would be roles you'd think your stockbroker's doing, or something else. So it's actually, there is a change in the way we have to look at the world too. So it's going to be a combination.
So just to add on that, I think adding clarity, and maybe in terms of this idea of how do you fertilize the environment so that more not-for-profits are feeling comfortable to explore this, whether it's a community foundation or an organization like the Rural Ontario Institute, and just organizations that capture case studies and then share them. There's probably a number of different repayment models. So Habitat, we got this question all the time. How can you pay 7.25%? That's like really good. And so we have on any construction project, we have a pro forma, and we incorporate our debt payments, whether it's to VCIB, who we use for our construction financing, all the way down the line, we roll those into the pro forma. And so the 7.25% that we're paying to people in our community, not to the bank, so we're maintaining wealth locally, which is another plus side. But that money is actually a cost savings for us when you look at what some of the rates are when we're paying the bank. So we're passing along a good return to the local community, and we're integrating that into the model. And people want to know, how are you paying what are you using to pay the payments, and how do we get our principal back? And for real estate, and for us, because we have maybe a 2-year project window, it's fairly simple and straightforward. At the point of project completion, we sell the units, whether they're market units or Habitat units, and we recoup the funds in order to pay the principal back. And we just have our finance people, thank God for our finance people, just figure out the numbers. But once we have a solid pro forma that's been verified by a project monitor and everything like that, then we know that we're in good standing. There's different models though, like what when you use community bonds to renovate a building, and then you have a business model that is used to pay the interest payments. That's a different way of structuring it. And I think to add clarity to people of, here's 5 different ways you can structure community bonds. Here's the Habitat way, which is whatever, and then here's another model, and here's another model, and here's another model, and then which one best aligns to how you might want to do it. We're already looking at evolving our community bond structure into almost more of like a revolving investment trust, where people want to leave their money with us. And then we can such that we can move forward on future projects. The security on that is because it wouldn't be tied directly through a mortgage to a project, so we would need to explore that. And I guess the only other thing I would add is, like, it's not that none of these investments are without risk, and we tell people that for sure. Like, if the project were to go belly up and we were forced to sell everything, all of our bondholders fall subordinate to the construction financing and the vendor take-back mortgage, if there is one. And so, the way that we communicate that is that there is risk, but the trustee who acts to ensure that when we draw down they hold the funds in trust, and only once we have an invoice that we can show that we're moving our project forward are we able to make that drawdown. So it adds a layer of security in that we're moving the project forward from a vacant piece of land through to shovel ready, through to 3/4 of the way done. It's still adding value to that project. So we're getting at some semblance of, anyway, I'm getting down into the weeds on my model.
That's great. This is the course, Social Finance 101. Zoe.
Oh, thank you so much. This is an invaluable opportunity to learn. So I appreciate you all being here. It's magic. I have two questions. So first is for the whole panel. Have you any experience with the Housing Accelerator Fund? And my second question is for Julia. You mentioned that the community bond was open source model, and I'm very interested in finding out what the material components of the bond campaign are. So if you can tell me where to find it, I'd love it.
Yeah, for
And that's
sure.
it.
So let's start with Julia.
Sure.
It's an easier one to answer.
Yeah, and my understanding of the housing fund is that it's municipalities that need to interact with the federal government to, so a lot of that is a municipal dialogue around what your municipality can bring forward. CSI has a book called The Community Bond, and there's a lot of things outlined in that. And then there's a lawyer that if anyone would like to connect to me, send me an email, julia@tencarden.ca, who basically founded the structure of the trust agreement and the bond certificate. So I think those would be like the first places to start.
Okay, so to translate, CSI is Center for Social Innovation.
Oh, sorry, yes.
In Toronto.
In Toronto, and they have an associated company, which I know particularly that you know, called Tapestry, right, who support communities. Be really interesting to see those models, though, Ryan. Anyone else want to speak about federal funding?
We have federal funding through CMHC, but I think Julia captured it well. That
Yeah, I'm curious if there's anyone from a municipality here who's working in housing, because maybe that's.
Do you want to just introduce yourself, maybe?
Maybe she should go to
What
the
if
mic.
we go to the mic?
Broadcast.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Hi, I'm Kim Wingrove, and I'm with Grey County. The Housing Accelerator Fund is a tool, as was noted from the federal government. I think our own investigations into that suggested that while it's valuable, its value is probably for very large and more urban centers. It's a very complex tool, and we just didn't find, and I know from our kind of colleague municipalities in a more rural context, didn't feel that it was really going to be something that was going to deliver the value that we needed here.
Thanks, Kim.
Very glad to be here tonight. Haven't seen some of you on the panelists for quite a long time, Marilyn. Ryan, I've heard lots of great stuff about you. So something popped into my head. I've been in the construction industry for 26 years. And with Habitat's mandate and the opportunity to maybe to scale this up a little bit and get that awesome knowledge out there, has Habitat, perhaps Ottawa head office, looked at maybe having a sit-down think tank with the Canadian Building Association? Many of those builders are about to retire, and they're in their late 60s or earlier, and have time, but have that knowledge, and may be really interested in working at having more of this scale up with the building market. And they also have a very strong mandate for net zero, right?
Yeah.
So they've been doing all the net zero pilots across Canada for a number of years, and they're very tied to the manufacturers, right? The builders choose the model that the product manufacturers line up. So there may be a real win model to make this happen too with the Canadian Home Building Association of Canada. So I wanted to plug that one in. I know you have a lot on your plate, but there's one more P on your plate.
I was just going to say that I met at a whole different thing in Elora. The net zero person for Canadian Home Builders lives in my community, and we're doing a carbon zero build, like not using offsets, but real zero. And so we're going to have a chat with her about it. But I think as a general thing, it's interesting because when you're trying to do affordable, or now it's called attainable housing, the sustainable is a challenge, because the lower the price, the harder it is to achieve the sustainability. So it's something we all got to think about. But the Home Builders Association could be a very valuable partner in all of this.
Can I ask Ryan a question? Ryan, are there other habitats who are using community bonds or social finance?
No, we were the first that I know of in Canada. I'm not. It may be explored in the U.S., but we've had a few reach out, and we'll probably find time to connect here as well. But we've had some reach out with questions because it's an attractive model. And yeah, hopefully we're able to do for them what you were able to do for us. But I think we're the first and only in Canada.
All right, just about a wrap in terms of questions. Can I make a quick closing statement?
Sure.
Yeah, it's been a kind of a privilege in a way to have been part of the social finance movement, first as a funder through Trillium for a long time now. And while I'm not very expert on any of the details, I've watched the landscape. And I would just like to say that two things. One is there has never been an issue as important as housing for generating the ecosystem across Canada for social finance. Communities really care. It implicates our kids, ourselves, our seniors, our businesses. So it's growing like topsy, and in the work we're doing with the Institute, we're finding new models every day. It's really, really quite exciting. And the second thing is, really nobody gets this completely. Nobody completely understands what happens when you do this hybrid modeling on hybrid modeling. But if our community is going to take advantage of new money coming down the pipes, we have to be ready to do it. And now is the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you to all the panelists. This has been a very stimulating discussion. I know it's opening up thinking in our community about new ways of working together. And we're looking forward to the Community Foundation. We've got a great roster of our board members here tonight, too. Maybe you could wave your hands. I think we've got about 7. Look around and thank them for their commitment to this innovation. We're just getting our feet wet. I've used that metaphor before, but it's a very exciting time for us, and this is encouraging, and we're so grateful to learn from our peers. And thank you so much to Randall and to Ryan and to Julia, and thank you to Marilyn. We have a little gift I think Annalise is going to distribute. And I want to remind you again about the event on November 17th with the Institute that's being held at Meaford Hall in the morning. It's called Reconnecting Community. Oh, sorry, I'm not. No, it's not. It's called New Ways to Finance the Housing Affordability Gap, Ensuring the Sustainability of Our Towns. And again, it'll sort of be chapter 2 to this conversation today. And if you're interested, you can register on the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay website. So we encourage you to do that. I want to thank Harmony Center and Kevin for managing the sound and the tech, and my amazing team at the Community Foundation office. Annalise Van Ord and Jen Legg is with us tonight. Kate Baker, not here, but she's a wonderful support too. Thank you. And Melry Wright stepped up to volunteer with us tonight, one of our Vital Signs Advisory Committee members, so we appreciate Melry doing that. And thank you all for showing up. We're really thrilled with the response, and complex terms and a new vocabulary, but I think Grey Bruce is ready to embrace these new models. Hey, and we're a trailblazer on so many fronts. We should jump right on board. Social innovation, I think it's going to help. We were live on YouTube tonight, and then the recording will reside on the Community Foundation's YouTube page. Annalise is nodding. If you go to our website tonight, there's a button right on the banner. You can click and watch the proceedings. And please share and let your friends and family know. And thanks again. It was a terrific conversation. We really appreciate it. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, thank you.